So I'd like to introduce our speakers today. We'll start with you, Alex. Could you introduce yourself?
Good morning. My name is Alex Kramov. I'm the Director of Cybersecurity and Privacy for Colorado State System, and more specifically, CSU Fort Collins campus.
Excellent. Thanks, Alex. Ramon.
Yeah, hello all. Ramon Delacruz here. I lead the architecture and assessment team as part of the Information Security and Data Privacy larger team at Harvard University.
Thanks, Ramon. Greg.
Hey, I'm Greg Pollock, the Director of Research and Insights at UpGuard. My team looks for better ways to understand and measure cyber risk.
Thanks, Greg. And hi, my name is Nick Lewis. I'm a Senior Program Manager at Internet2, focusing on the cybersecurity community. So the agenda for today is we just talked about introductions. We're going to talk a little bit about how we got here with Net Plus UpGuard, talk about the service evaluation that uh, Colorado State and Harvard both participated in. Then Greg is going to talk. Actually, after we're done with the service evaluation, we'll talk with Ramon and Alex about third-party risk management on their campuses and UpGuard. And then Greg will talk about UpGuard, and then we'll have some closing questions and want to hear your questions. So first, I want to start with some thank yous. Thank you to Ramon, Alex, and Greg and Jenny for the webinar. Then there's been a number of campuses involved in the NetPlus third-party risk management working group. There's 20 to 30 campuses involved with that. I'll talk more about the RFP that we did on the next slide. Thanks to those campuses, they put a ton of work into reviewing RFP responses, developing the RFP. I want to thank the UpGuard service evaluation campuses. They put so much work, Colorado State, George Washington University, Harvard University, Oklahoma State University, University of Alabama, Notre Dame, University of Tennessee, Vincennes University. And the reason why I'm calling out all these campuses is I've heard feedback from the community that maybe the community is not as involved as they used to be in community events. But I think it's been very selective. There's just so much going on nowadays, and so you can't be involved with everything. But there are campuses who are prioritizing being involved, and I want to thank and acknowledge them publicly because they are why we have Net Plus programs, and their leadership, it helps drive the community. Then I want to help thank the UpGuard team that worked with us over the RFP and the service evaluation, Casey Altieri and Amanda Alvarez. And then I want to thank all the internal project team at Internet2 that worked on this, because without them, we, of course, wouldn't have got here. So Net Plus UpGuard, how did we get here? So the Net Plus program started in 2011. Really was about helping campuses adopt cloud services. This is a long time ago. And so campuses were very early in their cloud journeys. And it was just really about what is cloud and learning about it. In 2016, HECVAT launched. Everyone had their own questionnaire, and it was a challenge. It made things hard to share. And so we started together as a community on HECVAT to make it a little bit easier to share information around third parties and vendors. Then in 2021, the Internet2 Cloud Scorecard launched to help campuses discover new services and service providers share information with the community, like share that they have a HECVAT or a VPAT. Then in 2022, Internet2 got feedback during our 5-year roadmap saying that we should do something around help campuses with third-party risk management because it was a big challenge. Like the scale of when campuses first started in 2011, you had maybe 1 to 5 third parties on your campus, Google, Microsoft, etc. But then as time goes on, of course, there's been an explosion of third parties and cloud services on campuses. And so in 2023, we launched a working group to develop requirements and to lead into an RFP for a third-party risk management service to help campuses scale their programs to keep track of all of the third parties. I've talked with some campuses where they have 1,000 plus third parties that they need to keep track of, and that doing that basically. HECVAT is a spreadsheet. Keeping track of 1,000 HECVAT spreadsheets in another spreadsheet doesn't scale very well. And so you need a service to help you scale that. And then we launched the RFP in 2024. And then in 2024, we also worked with EDUCAUSE on a third-party risk management poll to get more information about some of the challenges campuses need. And then we're here in the we started the service evaluation in July of last year, and now we're launching the program so that campuses can use the NET Plus UpGuard service to help manage the third parties on their campus. Good question, Adam. There's a question in the QA about for institutions earlier in the third-party risk management journey, what's the recommended starting point? Piloting UpGuard first or completing internal vendor inventory? How about Adam? I'm going to hold that to when we get into the panel questions, and we can get to that. Just one second. So talking a bit about the NET Plus service evaluation. After we awarded UpGuard the RFP, we then worked with them on developing a contract customized for higher education, and then we finalized the pricing coming out of the RFP. And then we documented the work that was done during the service evaluation so that future campuses can use that so you can use that for if you do adopt the NET Plus UpGuard service on your campus. So now we'll talk a little bit about campuses' experiences with third-party risk management. And one of the things that when we were just getting ready right now for the webinar, Alex made a comment how he's the sole person doing third-party risk management on his campus. And I was at a conference a year ago, and I was talking to a large U.S. bank, and they had 140 people doing third-party risk management on their campus. And I don't think there's 140 people doing third-party risk management across all of higher education. And so that's one area where if we can get together as a community, maybe we can help each other because no campus is going to have 140 people doing third-party risk management. And maybe we can get there as a community. But so let's start with Alex. Can you describe a little bit about your campus and the stakeholders and how many people on your team?
Absolutely. Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. Definitely appreciate having the conversation around vendor risk management, especially as of the events that took place last week. I hope it's now in front of everyone's eyes, and it's important to many stakeholders around campus. As I mentioned, I'm here to speak on behalf of Colorado State University Systems, but more specifically CSU Fort Collins campus, which is our flagship campus. It's a R1 research university located in beautiful Fort Collins, Colorado. I'd say so altogether, there's three campuses that are part of CSU Systems, and that's CSU Fort Collins, CSU Pueblo campus, and CSU Global, which is more of our online presence. Between all three campuses, we have somewhere around 54 to 55,000 enrollment. Um, Talking specifically about Fort Collins campus, we have 8 colleges and a very high number of various departments on campus, and everyone is a stakeholder. Anyone or every college or every department or any individual with a P card who wants to purchase a software or engage a third-party IT company for IT services, typically we highly encourage them to go through vendor risk assessment. Just to sort of describe you at a high level, we are trying to implement a software acquisition process, which is currently lives within the Division of IT. We have a form that folks can go fill out on our ITSM platform. That form sort of kicks off a number of various tasks. We have a weekly meeting where we engage with our procurement department. And that was probably the most important step for us. Once we made that connection with the procurement department, things sort of they began to work a little bit more smoothly. And once we have them on board, then it makes it a lot easier to interact with our stakeholders and communicate the importance of vendor risk assessment. So going back to once one of our users, one of the colleges fill out a software acquisition form, it kicks off this process where we engage three different groups. The first one, probably one of the more critical ones, is our data governance. Our data governance, I'm sorry, is closely tied with all the other processes, more specifically vendor risk assessment. The second process is to assess accessibility. So we request a VPAT from the vendor, and we make sure that they comply with whatever our latest standards are when it comes to accessibility. The part that my team is responsible for is the vendor risk assessment, which is sort of the third pillar of software acquisition. And we typically will engage with our users, and then we try to ask them to put us in touch with vendor's account rep, where we try to request HECVAT, SOC 2 Type 2, or if it's a smaller company and they don't have their cybersecurity program documented, then we will try to engage them with a cybersecurity questionnaire. So those are usually the three different types of how we try to collect information about vendor cybersecurity posture. Um, so HackVat is definitely one of the preferred ways of trying to collect that documentation. Um, Sometimes I would say, just personally, some of the smaller vendors sometimes don't really know how to fill out HackVat correctly. Specifically, they tend to forget to fill out the column where you have to provide evidence or document your evidence of your compliance. And that's where sort of UpGuard comes in, and there's a functionality of sending a gap questionnaire. So if there's anything that's missing in that information, we can always send a gap questionnaire to the vendor and give them 1 to 2 weeks to fill out that gap questionnaire. The issue usually comes in is who fills that out, because typically we deal with account reps, and 9 times out of 10, they're not the individual who should be filling out that questionnaire. So we try to get in touch with someone from their security team, or at least their IT team. I'd say that even as of about a year or 2 years ago, this process very ad hoc in nature. We've had UpGuard solution for a number of years, and we would try to sort of communicate with our core vendors, vendors that provide us our core network infrastructure, data center infrastructure, or some of the critical ERPs. And we would just sort of, if there was some sort of a cybersecurity incident, so it was very ad hoc driven, that we would say, okay, well, maybe it's time to go ahead and get them on board. I'd say we're still sort of trying to figure out how things would work for us. But as of last few months, we've been trying to be a little bit more formalized around this process. I mentioned we have the software acquisition process, and this is really helping us to catch either vendors coming in when we are just trying to establish that relationship with that vendor, or during the renewal time. So when various colleges try to do their annual renewal or upgrade or something that requires that interaction with procurement, that's when we try to come in and say, okay, well, maybe now this is time to get them onboarded and into our risk management as well. So at a high level, so that's sort of our process, and definitely happy to answer any more specific questions about either specifically our vendor risk assessment or how we interact with HECVATs.
Thanks, Alex. So over to you, Ramon. How do you Describe Harvard and your stakeholders and how you do third-party risk management.
Yeah, definitely. As you folks know, we are a very complex environment at Harvard. We have over 600 buildings. Our campus is, large, over 200 acres. And for some folks, might understand it better, is around 150 football fields. That's our campus. And we have 12 different schools. And that's where kind of the complexity kind of lies in. Um, the mass amount of schools that we have in faculty, we have about 20,000 faculty, and from those faculty and staff, and we have around 2,000 people working in IT. So the nature of us having those different schools introduce the challenges that different schools have different needs. Different schools have different types of data. Like for example, the law school and the medical school, they are very, very different schools. So because of that, we have very decentralized environment. We are working together in an initiative called One Harvard, where we're trying to integrate more as a university. But we do have, when it comes to stakeholders, each school will have their own IT team, their own security team, and they will be in charge of doing their own kind of vendor risk assessment if it's something that is used at the school level. For enterprise level applications, we have a central team, and I'm part of the university central security and data privacy team. We will do assessments at the enterprise kind of level. But our third-party risk management, we address this a little bit, potentially a little bit different. We don't assess everything. We have our risk classification, and then we say we only gonna assess things that fall into these two buckets that are the highest risk that we have at Harvard. And it's very, very focused on what we do. We also have very tight relationship with our strategic procurement team and digital accessibility team. And the way that we would engage with a vendor is whether there's a renewal or a new relationship, the request will go to a strategic procurement that will start working on contract pricing and all that. And based on the data sensibility or the risk, then my team will be involved. And based on that, then we start working on doing the assessment. And then as part of this process, then we evaluate everything. We see what the use case is, what type of data, whether it's a SaaS, provider, or whether it's just a consultant that we are hiring to help us do some service. Based on that, then we will have a different process based on the risk that the vendor introduces. So at that point, we will finalize our assessment, and then we will send a report to the service owner. The service owner is usually the person that creates the request that wants to use a type of vendor or technology. And then we will send the report also to a strategic procurement. And based on that report, then we will start working together on adjusting the contract to make sure that we include protections based on the gaps that we find on that assessment. One thing that we always like to mention is that we are not the police. We are in the business of making sure that our service owners know the risk and make a decision based on their own risk tolerance. As I mentioned, we are very decentralized. So, different schools have different risk tolerance, and even within the school, there are different departments. There are research teams. There are, administrative financial teams that have different set of tolerance when it comes to risk. So they will make the decision, not us. We will only advise and say, hey, this vendor seems very mature. Some of the things that we will suggest is that you look into this, on this, on this, maybe technical controls, or maybe we just rely on having strong contracts. And then they will make the decision. Just to kind of wrap up, and we will have opportunity for questions. Our philosophy as a university is we don't really want to spend a lot of time, and this is where UpGuard comes into place. It makes the process so much easier. We don't want to spend a lot of time doing third-party risk management and assessing vendors because at the end of the day, we have heard of everything that is going on with large LMS right now, an incident, and I don't want to mention names, but that's a vendor that we assessed, that we evaluated, and it passed all our requirements, and they still had an incident, right? So what we focus on as a university is making sure that we have um, first of all, data minimization, so important. You're gonna send data to vendors. We make sure that we only send the necessary data, and we try to remove as much data as possible. We have a strong relationship with our vendors, with our internal teams, our strategic procurement, digital accessibility team, the service owner, and that we have a very simplified and very efficient incident response plan where to every party, every stakeholder, if something were to happen, we can quickly jump in and reduce the impact. Um, Again, we cannot stress enough the our relationship with strategic procurement. We have monthly meetings when we meet and we discuss contracts, we discuss topics, what are some of the things that vendors are asking and things like that. Some of the things that we're working as well is emphasizing that, especially in the age of AI now, it's very, very important that you have a strong language when you're working with a vendor. When it comes to multi-tenancy, it comes with, training, data, prohibitions, and even things as, click-through agreements. You could do an assessment and have a contract with a vendor, and potentially there could be a click-through agreement that a user might agree to lesser terms than what you have negotiated. So, we really focus on that kind of space. But just we'll have room for questions, but that's Harvard as a summary.
Excellent. Thanks, Ramon. So I think we'll go off script and just go right to the Adams for, question from the QA. For institutions earlier in the third-party risk management journey, what's the recommended starting point? Piloting UpGuard first or completing an internal vendor inventory? Like, um, Ramon, since you're unmuted, I'll ask you first. Like, where'd you start?
Yeah. So one of the things that we did is, again, we didn't want to assess everything. So we identify what are the high critical vendors that we have, not only based on what data they have, but what the impact is. Sometimes we have vendors that don't have very sensitive data, but if the Harvard website were to be down for a limited time, that's a big impact to the university, right? So, we gather a list based on a spreadsheet. A spreadsheet will do, right? Gather a list, and beyond that, we also work with schools and say, okay, you have the critical vendors, but which one are your top 10 vendors out of this list? Like, what are some of the vendors that if there was an incident within these 10 vendors, you could have massive impact to, learning, research, and all in our mission. So I would say having that list is probably the most important. And then based on that, just finding down what are your requirements, what are the things, the goals, what are you trying to accomplish, right? Maybe you have a strong GRC program, right? That you have already a risk register, you have other things that complement that part that you're trying to do. And then based on that, then you start looking into vendors because again, some vendors have different, some are more on the GRC side and some are, maybe they are more like they monitor vendors more and maybe that's a feature that you like. So that's the way that I would recommend.
Thanks, Ramon. Alex, what do you think about, or where'd you start or with third-party risk management?
Sure. I think the most important step for us was establishing our data governance program first and defining various types of data classification. So that sort of gave us insight in how do we want to interact with our vendors. So if some of our vendors handling sort of a higher levels of our data classification data, then we definitely wanted to make sure that we are comfortable with those relationships. And sometimes it kind of gets tricky because some of the sort of vendors, specifically it's sort of unsuspected how much access they might actually have. Where some of the colleges, for example, they want to buy a software solution that keeps track of students' data so that they can make sure that they keep track of their graduation dates or some of their future plans. And then accidentally, it was sort of like, oh, well, this is a student PII data. We definitely want to make sure that we assess these vendors. For example, our LMS, there's a large number of plugins. We refer to them as LTIs. Um, there's a large number of these LTIs, and it's sort of, you don't really think about it because sometimes people kind of sort of dismiss it. They're like, oh, well, it's just a plugin for your Canvas infrastructure. But then the more you think about it, okay, well, they actually do have access into quite a bit of students' data. And so we try to emphasize priority on anything that handles students or faculty and staff PII or any other types of regulated data. So that's kind of where we started, and that's what sort of gives us that foundational sort of backing from our leadership and other departments across campus to continue to implement this program and to really sort of understand the type of data that our users interact with. Because for some of them, like I said, it might not seem all that important. This is data that they deal with on a daily basis. But as an institution, we definitely want to ensure that this data is protected and we're doing our due diligence, assessing vendors, ensuring that we have appropriate controls, technical controls, and also contractual controls around how we're protecting this data.
Excellent. That made me think about um, the your stakeholders, the different types of controls, and that um, and then Ramon, you mentioned minimizing what data was necessary. Like those are like core things about knowing what's going on with that third party. And one of the things that I've heard lots of questions and concerns about from campus is like things change so rapidly. So like Alex, you're saying, oh, they were collecting this data for graduation, keeping track of graduation, but now, oh, they're going to be pivoting into let's use that data um, for something else related to tracking the student's performance in the classroom. How do you go, going off script a little bit, but how do you go and um, keep track of what changes over time um, with the third parties on your campus? Do you go back to the requester, the business owner for the service?
I guess I can probably go first. So we typically set, oh yeah, within UpGuard, there is a feature to perform reassessments. And when we conduct the initial assessment for any particular vendor, we always try to set that reassessment date a year from the initial assessment. And so that gives us a chance when we get that notification from UpGuard when it pops up and says, hey, this is the list of vendors that are due or about to be due for reassessment. This is our chance to say, okay, let's see if anything has changed. Can we reach out to stakeholders? Can we have a conversation about has there been any changes to that environment? Um, are vendors asking or consuming more of our data? So I would say that annual reminder that would be our chance to sort of at least have that conversation. Now, there's always instances when our stakeholders or various colleges, when they come to us and they say, okay, well, we want to expand this program and do something in addition to what's already working today, that then this would also sort of be an opportunity to say, okay, well, are we on the same page? And so I mentioned data classification a couple times, and we do utilize UpGuard differently for different types of data in how we assess and how many different controls we want to apply to vendor risk assessment. So typically for anything that includes student PII data, we would use core set of controls. And then, of course, if we're talking about our ERP infrastructure, we would be using like elevated controls. So it's that finding that balance between the scope of what that software or that application is doing for us versus the number of controls that we're assessing, and then that periodic assessment, doing it once a year and or anytime somebody brings it up to us, which I'd like to say happens all the time, but maybe it doesn't. So, but at least once a year, we would have this conversation with our stakeholders.
Yeah, and to add to that, Alex, I would re-emphasize then again, finance team, procurement are our best friends here. A lot of the times we assess a vendor because of one feature or one product, and then all of a sudden they come up with a different product that handles different type of data, or maybe a more invasive type of activity, right? And you cannot just jump into doing this new thing because you already have a contract. That contract was not specific to that application, right? So this is where a strategic procurement would actually flag it and say, hey, this is a new product from the same vendor, but it's a new product with different set of requirements. We need to kick off an assessment again. And again, finance team, very, very important on even doing your inventory. If you want to find your vendors, follow the money. That's the best way that you can really have a clear picture. And once there's an increase on spending, there probably more licenses or maybe a new feature of that same vendor.
Oh, that's really interesting, Ramon. That made me think of like one of the other edge cases that maybe is unique to higher education is like we have lots of vendors we don't actually pay for potentially.
Mm.
And so, like, if that doesn't go through your standard procurement process for maybe you've got an alumni that has a startup that's giving you the software, like, what do you do there? Like, if you're not paying for it, you may not see it through other processes, but you may still have some data going to them.
And that's where Alex mentioned the data governance is very important. Like for our policy, regardless of whether you're spending money or not, if you're using this type of data, you have to have a contract. And if you have to have a contract, then you need to engage with strategic procurement, and then procurement will engage with us.
Thanks. For Alex, how do you do that where there's no financial transaction involved?
I think that's a really good question. And once again, I want to bring up data governance. Our data governance team actually, it's part of their requirement to conduct annual data governance training. So we want to make sure that data owners are at least aware that they have that responsibility to ensure that data is protected. Um, Outside of that, I think we also try to sort of socialize our process as much as possible and make sure that folks across campus are familiar of how critical and important it is to it's okay to interact with vendors, but we want to make sure that our data is safe and protected. And once again, things happen like just the what happened last week. Obviously, a lot of these companies and ourselves included are not immune from cyber threats. And UpGuard also helps us with notifications. So if there's a company out there that has been compromised, that at least we always get that notification from UpGuard or other sources, but at least it should always be an UpGuard as well. So I would say to just sort of answer your question is to provide continuous education to our users around cybersecurity and data protection. And also try to get in front of people, try to socialize this process and make sure that you get them on board of how important this is.
Thanks, Alex. And so I see another question from Adam. How about we just keep rolling on the questions? Adam asks, when a vendor has a publicly disclosed security incident, as we've seen one recently, and there's a new one every like 3, 6 months, big one. So it's not just about the one last week, but it's a process. Even if they're not due for a reassessment, what's your process for triggering out of cycle review, and what do you request from the vendor at the um, Ramon, do you want to start with that one?
I was sitting this one out. That's a tough one. I was hoping that Alex will jump in, but
I mean,
just joking. This is a very difficult question because for us it's like per vendor and per incident kind of use case. Depending what happened, a lot of the assessment we do, a lot of the times some of the incidents that happen could not be prevented by the things that we check as part of the assessment, right? Like somebody fell for a phishing scam, right, and click on the wrong link, and they all of a sudden they have access to the credential of this person that worked for at the vendor level, right? They do have security training, they do have multi-factor authentication. It's just that there's an adversary that is working with a whole country that has the funds and all that to be able to dedicate to do that. Sometimes there's not much we can do. That's why I emphasize that having the strong relationships with your team and be able to quickly respond is the most important. But just to answer the question, we don't really have a formal process to say if X happened, you kick automatically a reassessment. No, we meet with the vendor, we see what the incident is we see that okay, it's very difficult for you to prevent this. What are you doing in the like to prevent this type of incident in the future? And then they will provide a plan for us, and then we will sit back and say, does the plan look good, or should we be considering moving to a different vendor? And moving to a different vendor is a very, very complicated thing, uh, especially for an organization of our size. And we have done it before. We did it with LastPass. We moved into 1Password.
that's right. So Alex, how about for CSU?
So I think I'd like to mention a couple things. I think first, when we do vendor risk assessments, we always generate the vendor risk assessment report out of UpGuard that we typically share with our stakeholders. And then we also encourage our stakeholders to share these reports with their account reps and share it with vendors. That way they understand the information that we have, and they can always respond to it as well. So within UpGuard, there's a functionality where when you generate a risk assessment report, you can include any um, previous incidents or times when the company might have been in the news for a cybersecurity incident. So, because even for me visually, that's important because that's sort of a trigger. Like if you see, oh my gosh, there are so many different compromises over the last couple of years, maybe we got to have a conversation around what's going on with this specific vendor. So that's sort of like treating what happened in the past. As far as what's going on with a company, sort of if they just had a recent cybersecurity incident, if it's a sort of a major incident, then we typically would do some sort of a after action review where we try to engage with our stakeholders and try to figure out, okay, was any of our data compromised? Was any of our data part of what happened? And then sort of depending on the scale of the cybersecurity incident, then we'll try to engage with the vendors themselves and try to get those questions answered. I mean, I'm not sure if there's a whole lot of validity into rerunning the vendor risk assessment in UpGuard because we would still be using the same HackVat or the same SOC 2 Type 2. Like that didn't change. We just know that, hey, something major took place. We would just note it. And so during our after action review, that's when we typically try to figure out, okay, what is our campus response? Are we going to implement any technical controls to sort of try to protect our data in the future? But not necessarily rerunning that same vendor risk assessment. I'd say going back to that, having that annual cycle, the next time our contract is up, then we'll rerun that vendor risk assessment, keeping in mind that incident that just took place.
And just to add, without spending a lot of time, but a lot of the times that when something happened, that's you get additional information from the vendor that you don't typically get from these type of assessments, right? Like how transparent they were, like how quickly they communicated with you and they were willing to work with you and meet with you to kind of address the situation, and how their ability to come up with a plan, right? And add things to the roadmap to make sure that you're good. Like those are some of the things that are not part of the assessment. That what is your confidence on this vendor, right? And one of the vendors that we moved from, it was not based on any technical or any policies that they have. It was we didn't like how transparent they were with the incident. We were keep on the dark with the things. They claim things. They really downplay the incident, and because of that, we didn't have enough time to actually respond to it on our end. Because at the end of the day, when a vendor has an incident, is your name is the one gonna be on the news, right? And is the data that you're supposed to be protecting, right? So you need to really clean up a lot of the mess, right? So we take a lot into consideration, like how do they respond, how transparent, and all those factors that are not typically part of an assessment.
That's great. That's really great advice, Alex and Ramon. Um, so we'll save some more time for questions at the end, but let's go over to Greg and hear a little bit about. Oh, wait, I'm sorry. I had one slide about what's next. We're gonna launch the Net Plus UpGuard program. We're gonna engage with the community. We're gonna coordinate with the HECVAT community and the third-party risk management working group to get the program and help campuses develop third-party risk management practices. And then we're going to be starting an early adopters group of the service evaluation campuses. We'll be starting a Slack channel, and at CPPC, um, I got a request to start doing some potential community calls to help sharing, like, here's how you actually do this so that you can have real-time discussion about how this is done, so that we can continue this discussion and continue to build community and help each other. And so now over to Greg for the UpGuard.
Hey, thanks, Nick. I think I've actually greatly over prepared my slides for this, but that actually speaks to something I wanted to add on to the incident that shall not be named. My colleagues at UpGuard were asking last week, is the webinar even going to happen? Like they thought it was a total panic. And I said, hey, during incidents, and it is a crisis, but how that goes is a function of how well you've prepared. We're doing this because these guys have prepared exceptionally well. And so while it's not good, they're not running around with their hair on fire. They are running an incident response process, not just reacting to it. And so that's, I think, one of my takeaways I've been talking to people about is, okay, when an incident is happening, there's only so much under your control. And exactly like Ramon said, like there are incidents that cannot be prevented at all. But there are a lot of other things that are under your control, um, not just with whether they happen or not, but how your time goes during that response process, how chaotic it is, how well you're able to provide the information that all your stakeholders need, communicate outward, and then just have a plan so that it's orderly. It's risk management and not just chaos. But yeah, so that's something that's been on my mind this week with talking about what do we do during times like this? Well, it's easy to be caught up in the moment, but really the lesson is take a step back and prepare. And that's sort of where UpGuard comes in with helping to prepare for whatever kind of vendor processes you're going through. And so, yeah, UpGuard, we're a cyber risk posture management company. So we have products for vendor risk, attack surface management, and user risk. And the reason we have those are because they're deeply interconnected. That to understand the risk of a vendor, it's really helpful to know, are they under attack? Do they have a lot of leaked credentials? Do they have indicators that they might be breached? And the same thing with some of the user risk management, which helps not just with understanding what your users are doing, but really with vendor discovery. That's why we've moved into that, is that discovering what vendors people actually use. It can be very helpful simply to see what they are using. Um, Today, of course, we're talking about the vendor risk component, and I think one of the things that's most important to note about it is that vendor risk management can be a really time-intensive process because it is a multi-step process that involves a lot of other groups in your organization, and having the strong relationships that you guys were saying with finance, procurement, GRC. There are other entities that can help you or may have information that you need. And then it also involves working with externals, which can introduce a huge amount of lag to that process. And I think one of the things that I like most about our product is that there are different insertion points in that process for you to focus on, depending on where your capabilities are, where you think you can do the best. So there's sort of a useful vendor intake component to help other externals within your organization say, hey, I want to use a vendor, and have them give you the information in a structured way. There are various, software components to help accelerate the evidence collection, assessment, and then even going on into continuous monitoring so that if something changes with a vendor, for example, not just how they're being used, like you guys were talking about, but a vendor you use adds in an AI component, that you know about that. Or, new vulnerabilities are discovered. That's maybe the most salient example. Now you know whether that affects your vendor. And that gives you, the critical information sort of between the annual assessments, when they're just these really, singular data points that are incredibly critical. So those are the different points where you could use UpGuard and get started with a program. Thanks, Nick. Next slide. Yeah, and so one of the main focal points is the questionnaire process, and especially with the HECVAC questionnaire. And so, yeah, I mean, like Ramon and Alex were talking about, there are many stages to getting a questionnaire completed. And, in theory, it's you send them a questionnaire, they fill it out, and they send it back. That can take days or weeks, and then have as many turns as the vendor requires. And so what we've done is help identify and then automate those steps. So, yeah, I mean, like Alex was saying, they send you back something. Well, it's not good enough. Then you need to get another turn of the wheel. Well, these are all kind of like, these are good problems for software to help with. And if you go to the next slide, then this is where we have, sorry, yeah, cool. We have spent like years measuring this and trying to make it better, and have found things that do work. So yeah, do people respond to a questionnaire? We've tried various approaches to that, and now we get pretty good questionnaire response rates. And then trying to not just like, take work off your plate, but to get you answers quicker so that the end-to-end process is done sooner. We've added in some of the AI capabilities are very effective here. I'm sure there's a healthy skepticism around AI in the group. This is, a lane where AI and the evals for AI results are good. You get questionnaire responses back. It's a fairly constrained problem space. It can help you do mapping of those or identification of missing evidence or incomplete answers to help you with the read part of that process. And then also your vendors are probably, providing those questionnaires to many of their clients. And so getting the vendor the tools to be able to reuse those and provide you the answers from their evidence, another place where AI is a really nice intermediary to say, okay, cool, you have a SOC 2 report. I want to know the answer to these questions. The AI can iterate through those and then provide you a suggested mapping. And we keep a human in the loop so that there's no garbage, but also it really is quite convenient to have it read something for you and then give you the answers to those. And actually, I was going to mention yesterday. I'm gonna skip all of my research slides because I had this really cool interaction yesterday. I was talking to a healthcare system, which I think in some ways comparable in that they have a lot of employees and several campuses, and also a lot of employees, but relatively small number of people working on third-party risk management there. And the guy was saying in 2023 they were completing 1 to 2 risk assessments a month, and they have been focused on using UpGuard to improve that and to identify different parts of the process where they could get measurable improvements. And over time, and you might think, 1 to 2 risk assessments a month, maybe that is a small number. Again, like I don't know, everyone starts somewhere. So if that's, you have to start with something, and that's better than nothing. Anyway, over time, he's been able to greatly accelerate that to where now he sometimes, if he gets good responses, he can do a risk assessment in 1 day. That was his fastest, but on average doing about 5 to 10 times as many risk assessments per year as he was before, really just by sort of making these incremental improvements on the parts of it that can be improved by software. So yeah, sorry, that's my UpGuard talk. I did a bunch of research about the vendor ecosystem, but there's not time for it. And anyway, I'll just publish a blog post if you're interested.
And we'll include your slides in the follow-up email because it is interesting. But that your comment, Greg, around incremental improvements is really key. It's like, what do you learn from an incident? What do you learn from as you're going through your processes to then just do continuous improvement so you can make it better for yourself? And that's where we work as a community together to hopefully do that continuous improvement for the community. I think we've got maybe enough time for one question. So if anybody's got a question that we haven't gotten to yet, I'm watching the QA panel right now, or feel free to put it in the chat. So we've got, and so we'll wait like 10 more seconds if you've got any questions, final questions to talk about before we close. And if you don't, I've got one going on what Greg was just asking about was like that we asked at a HECVAT workshop at CPPC. Oh, you want to see more of the actual product. Thanks for the so yeah, definitely we can get you in contact with somebody at UpGuard to see a demo of the product. We're focusing mostly on campuses and your experiences and how UpGuard helps them, but definitely can get you involved.
Yeah, I didn't want to over accentuate UpGuard, but we have people who'd be very happy to show you a demo and then yeah, really tailor it to your situation.
And I will say, Nick, that each university or school is in a different stage of this kind of program, right? Some have more maturity than others, and that's completely okay. I would say use us as resources, connect on LinkedIn or send us a ping. We'll be happy to share our experience and some of the things we're doing. A lot of the things about our program are on our Harvard website. You can just pretty much copy them and start doing some of the things on at your university. We have no problem with that. We should definitely build a community where we help each other and make sure that at the end of the day, we are in the business of teaching and research, and we want to make sure we promote that.
Exactly, right on, Ramon. Okay, no more questions have come in, and so we'll definitely can send some in later if you think of them. And as Ramon was mentioning, building community, we're getting ready we'll launch at some point some Net Plus UpGuard working group calls or community calls or something along those lines, where we can get together to get more in the details and have a Slack channel to have more real-time discussions. So just to close out, thank you so much to Ramon, Alex, and Greg for our webinar today. Thanks to attendees for coming and listening and for your questions. And then just a quick reminder.